Welcome back. You're getting Gatsby'd so I can think this through. I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, Japanese, and a section of English language arts. Talk to me about it at any of these places. And I said in my last episode that teaching language arts makes me feel like a first-year teacher again, because there's a lot of teaching moves that I'm just not proficient in for English language arts that I am for all the languages I teach. So I'm watching my colleagues and they're having Socratic seminars and fish bowls, and they've got students in their little pods and everything, and the students are on task and they're talking to each other about what they're reading. I don't know how to get there yet. Okay, my students are talking about what they bought at Target or what the latest episode of Stranger Things was or whatever. I can't keep them on the target yet of what we're supposed to be studying. So I turned to this book, which I really love. This is The Strategic Teacher by Silver, Strong, and Perini. And they have a lot of good stuff out of here. And I have some stuff from other books too that as I come across them, I will mention where I get everything from. But what I did was I went through this book and I said, these are the ones I want to use for The Great Gatsby. And there's four that I thought would be really good. And I cycle through them, okay? I don't do the same thing every single time because that would bore the students. But I'm having a lot of success. This is my second year doing English language arts. And these are working really well. They worked really well last year. They're working really well this year. Okay, so first one is the technique that they call Do You Hear What I Hear? And I found this from the Center for Literacy and Primary Education, but heck, this works for adults too, right? Okay, I just love this quote. Reading aloud is probably the most important thing that teachers can do and needs to be a frequent and regular part of each school day. All right, and then I make a little note to myself how many pages I'm reading aloud, which ones I'm doing, okay? So first of all, let me go back here. First of all, I read pages, in this case, it was pages 1 through 4. I just read it aloud to the students and I just make them listen to me. And then I say, take out some note paper and I'm going to read it again. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to retell the story. So you make whatever notes you need to make so that you can do that. Okay, then I have them stand up. Now, the first time I did this year, I said, find the first person farthest in the room for you. But this year, they needed a seating chart. Last year, my students were good about this. This year, the second time I did this, I just took out I have index cards with their names written on it. It's like a popsicle stick approach. And I shuffled it in front of them and said, tell me when to stop. And then I said, okay, Bob, you go with Ethel. Fred, you go with Candace. And I just matched them up that way. Okay. So one of you will be the reteller, the other the coach. And I said, reteller, put your notes away. Coach, your notes are out and you can look at them. When your reteller gets stuck of what was going on, you got your notes, you help them get unstuck. Okay. And then after a while, I had them switch roles. Okay. So I walked around and eavesdropped. I have a paraprofessional in the room and I had to kind of coach her not to rescue everyone, but she's great. And so it was just, what did you pull out of the story? What do you remember from the story so far? It was only 4 pages. What do you remember from those 4 pages? So that always works really good because the students are very focused on what it is they have to talk to each other about. At this point, after they've switched roles, then I let them grab a copy of the text. And I have a big bag of the books that we checked out of the library, and they don't get to touch them until this point. Okay. And then I give them a bunch of questions. Okay. So the first one is a vocabulary question. Actually, there's always 2 vocabulary questions to start with. It could be anything. All right. I just have, what does this mean? And write 2 adjectives kind of thing. Okay. Or I'll say, reword this or whatever. Then there's always a quotation question. Okay. So I just pick out one of the most memorable lines and then have them write about it. In there, they've got their notebooks. Okay. So they have to write it down. And they're still with their partner, so they can still talk to their partner. And then there's character motivation question. And in this case, I want them to think about what is a reliable or an unreliable narrator. So they write about that for a minute, and then they discuss it. And then I have them find another group of 2. And They get to that group of 2, and then they can compare their answers, which gets them a lot of really good targeted discussion that I wanted them to have. It just needs a little more guardrails, I think, than my colleagues have. Okay. After that, after they've discussed, then there's always a little creative writing piece. And I'm really glad I'm doing this year, especially because, last year the creative writing was a little bit of teeth pulling, but this year I've got some students who really just want to creatively write. As a matter of fact, for our Crucible essay that we just did, I had 3 students. I said, okay, here's the essay that you have to do. And these 3 students came to me and they were saying something. And I was like, oh, would you rather write fan fiction about the Crucible? And they went all in on that. And they took what everybody else was doing as a 5, 6, 7-page essay. These students were each writing 30, 35 pages of fan fiction about the Crucible. Okay? So, and that's not what my colleagues wanted them to do, but for me, it's like, I just want to get you to write. That's my big thing, right? So, I always have this creative writing thing in here, and it's just a little thing, but some of the students are really, really taking to it, and I'm really happy. Okay, so that was one technique from that book, The Strategic Teacher. This one is reading for meaning, and this is my secret slide to myself whenever I'm making a reading for meaning lesson. What do I need in it? All right, so I'm showing you my secret slide. So I have the students write down, and I apologize, everything got formatted weird somehow when I opened this. I have the students write this in their journals. Okay, I'm gonna read them something, and they're gonna write it right here, and then they're gonna say whether they agree or they disagree. And then when they read the book, they have to either write proof for or proof against, and they don't need to write the exact quote. They can just write page 5, Nick complains. Page 20. Gatsby waxes poetic about Daisy. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like actual quote marks and what's in the quote marks. It can be notes. All right. So let me show you what this looks like when I show it to the students. I say, write the following in your notebook. And then these are all things that I pull out. They're not going to be formatted properly. I apologize. The rich people talk different than the poor people. Do you agree or disagree? And sometimes I have them read first, and then I say this, but this class, to focus them, I gave them all the questions first, and then I let them read, okay? The fact that Tom got Myrtle a puppy shows he loves her more than he loves Daisy. Here, I'm trying to move it so you can see it. Things got formatted weird. We can tell that Nick enjoys partying. Agree or disagree? Okay, so it's that kind of stuff. And this got formatted wrong. I want to talk to you about this line. After I've let them read the pages in question, and they've answered all that agree or disagree, and they've said why, what proof for or what proof against did they have, then I usually pull out a line or a small section that I really want them to think about. And then they have to write about it in their book. And if there's time, I'll have them discuss with a friend. Okay, it doesn't have to be a matching up thing like before. It could be elbow partner. Okay, so that was technique number 2. Technique number 3 is the mind's eye. So I knew before I even started teaching English language arts, I was told you're going to teach English language arts. You've got the Crucible, you've got Great Gatsby, you've got Raisin in the Sun. We're going to do this. And as I spent that summer trying to get up to speed and rereading The Great Gatsby that I haven't read in 30 years, I realized, okay, the students are going to have a couple of hard times here, because the big things are they're not going to understand that Gatsby cannot walk away from his phone. If he wants to hear from Daisy, he's got to stay at home waiting by the phone. All right, I was expecting that. I wasn't expecting how much the language had changed from the 1920s and how inaccessible that was going to be to my students. And a lot of them are struggling readers anyway. They don't like to read. It's teeth pulling to get them to read. And so I think a lot of the problem is whether or not they can visualize what they're reading. So the mind's eye I thought was going to be a really good technique. And it is. It's my students' favorite technique, I think. So what I do is, first of all, I tell them, you get to choose. Are you going to draw a picture in your journal? And we do this quite often because they really like it a lot. Are you going to develop a question that you hope the chapter will answer? Are you going to generate a prediction about the chapter? Are you going to describe your personal feelings that were evoked as I'm reading the chapter aloud to you? Okay. Most of them choose the first one, but the other ones are there too. Sorry, I'm over 10 minutes. Okay, so the first time I read it aloud to them. Well, I don't read the chapter aloud to them. I'm going to show you what I do. Okay, so just the first time, I just want them to listen. And what I do is I go through the chapter and I've picked out some of the most visual phrases. Okay, let me move this out of the way so that you're not distracted by it. Okay, afraid for a moment that my house was on fire. Suppose we take a plunge in the swimming pool. I haven't made use of it all summer. I want to get the grass cut. I realize now that under different circumstances, that conversation might have been one of the crises of my life. Okay, so I just read these phrases to them. I have a lot for this chapter. I had them both on their feet with the desperate suggestion that they help make tea in the kitchen. So again, sorry about my formatting being off on this one. But so I just read these short little phrases to them. And I do it one time through, and I've got like, I don't know, three groups of it. I do it one time through, and then I say, okay, now you can write. Because sometimes, after they hear a couple more sentences, they're like, oh, I get what's going on. So I've pulled out what I think are very visual phrases, and then I read them aloud to the students, and they make their little drawing, okay? Then I give them the book again, and I say, now you can read this section where I drew these things out. And then I ask them, how close were you? When you were visualizing this, how close were you? How close were your pictures? How close was your prediction? How close was you were talking about your personal connection? How close were you? Okay. Write a paragraph about how close you were or how close you weren't. Okay. In the second paragraph, then I'll pull out something that I want them to understand in the book. Okay. It's raining at this point in the book. And the third paragraph, what's with the clock? And I have, of course, the quote about the clock almost falling to the floor so that they can think about that. All right, and then the last one from this book is window notes, and I'm way over 10 minutes. I apologize. This one was really short. I just have them draw 4 boxes in their notebook. What are the facts? What's going on? They have to come up with 4 facts. What are the mysteries? What are they wondering about? Or what are the characters wondering about? Just 4 of them. And then I ask them a question about putting themselves in the character's shoe, because I want to work on that empathy piece. Okay, so here's my 2 questions for this one, and then another empathy one, and there's 4 questions. I just think formatting is weird, so you can see there's 4. All right, so I'm going to pause here before I tell you about the next thing. This is all really solid in my head, but the next couple of things I'm just kind of thinking through, and that's why I thought, hey, I better make a YouTube video so that I can share this with people, and they can help me think through this. So if you've got ideas, please put them in the comments, and hope to see you on the next one.